Okay, let's unpack this. We are embarking on a massive deep dive today into the very foundations of Mesoamerican civilization. We're going to be focusing on three colossal power centers, Teotihuacan, Tikal, and then the final great zenith of Chichén Itzá.
And the sources you've provided us with are just incredible. They detail the sheer scale, the forgotten engineering, and the profound and sometimes terrifying religious obsessions that really powered these societies.
Yeah, exactly. Our mission here isn't just to, recount the facts about these ancient ruins.
Right. It's to synthesize how they achieved what was essentially global status hundreds, even thousands of years ago.
We're talking about cities meticulously planned to house hundreds of thousands of people.
Where you have these 70-meter high pyramids built without any metal tools, without draft animals, and without the wheel.
And that detail, no metal tools, no pack animals, that for me is the foundation of our conversation.
It has to be.
Because these weren't just functional cities, they were engineered cosmograms.
Literally physical replicas of the universe as their priests and rulers understood it.
All designed to maintain this perfect, fragile connection between the elite and the gods. We really need to understand the mechanics of how they made the impossible, possible.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, you see this crucial timeline of cultural transformation. Teotihuacan, which is the most mysterious and the oldest of the three, it really sets the stage. Its unique architecture and its political ideology heavily influenced the Mayan cities.
Especially Tikal.
Especially through conquest, trade. And those lessons, the good and the bad, they ultimately informed how Chichén Itzá developed centuries later.
And when we talk about scale, we're not talking about small, overgrown villages.
Not at all.
Teotihuacan, at its height, was comparable to Rome or Han China. It was one of the 5 largest cities on Earth at the time.
Which is just staggering to think about.
It is. And even the seemingly remote jungle cities, they surprise us. Tikal, for example, thanks to recent LiDAR technology, it's been shown to be 38 times larger in area than scholars previously thought.
So we're dealing with truly massive, organized urban centers that demand a rethink of everything we thought we knew about ancient urban.
Let's start with the grand original, Teotihuacan. It's a city so old and so fundamentally alien to the later cultures that the Aztec, who found it long after it collapsed.
They just called it the birthplace of the gods.
Exactly. And the deepest mystery remains. We still don't definitively know who built it.
Yeah, the true identity of the builders is basically lost to history. But their legacy is this unprecedented level of organization. The city reached a truly staggering population of up to 200,000 inhabitants.
And this wasn't a city that grew organically, right?
None at all. It took 5 centuries to complete, but it was executed according to a singular, precise architectural master plan.
It really is the ultimate expression of urban planning.
It
was constructed entirely as a giant, perfect cosmogram, a literal physical blueprint of the cosmos as they saw it.
And it used that orthogonal layout, that pristine grid system that, is instantly recognizable to anyone who lives in a modern planned city.
With the 2-kilometer-long Avenue of the Dead providing that central north-south axis.
Dividing the city into 4 perfect quadrants.
What's fascinating here, though, is the absolute commitment to this cosmogram, even when it required just catastrophic labor.
Oh, absolutely. Around 200 AD, the evidence suggests the entire leadership decided to implement this radical shift in their understanding of the universe.
So what did they do?
They proceeded to destroy, rebuild, and physically reorient the entire city.
The entire city? That's astonishing. We aren't talking about moving a few statues here.
No, we're talking tens of thousands of dwellings, the central temples, the entire infrastructure.
And they imposed this precise 15.5-degree shift east of magnetic north. Why? Why would you do that?
Well, it wasn't arbitrary. The new alignment seems to be about tracking specific celestial events. It was likely tied to their growing political and religious power, and it demanded that the physical space reflect this newly understood.
You raised a great point. Why was the cosmological integrity of the city more important than the immense labor costs of destroying and rebuilding thousands of homes?
It speaks volumes about the absolute power of the ruling elite, doesn't it? The centralization of resource must have been total.
To successfully impose a physical shift that dictates the alignment of every street, every doorway, and every ceremonial space for a city of 200,000 people. That is total control.
It's dictating not just governance, but the daily physical rhythm of life for everyone.
And this commitment to astronomical precision is literally built into the stone of their largest monuments.
Yes, the Pyramid of the Sun is the perfect example. It's the largest pyramid in Mesoamerica, 5 meters high, over 1 million cubic meters of volume.
And its alignment.
The western wall is aligned perfectly with the setting sun on April 29th and August August 12th.
Why those specific dates? What's the significance?
Those dates are crucial. They mark the start of the rainy season and the start of the dry season, respectively.
So the alignment didn't just track the sun, it physically synchronized the city with the agricultural cycle.
It was a massive permanent celestial calendar made of stone, essential for survival.
And to get that kind of precision, they must have needed standardized measurement.
They did. Our sources detail the existence of the Teotihuacan measurement unit, the TMU.
The TMU.
It measured about 83 centimeters, and this is where the ritual really meets the engineering.
How so?
Well, the TMU is speculated to represent the ritual distance from a person's fingertips to their heart.
So the fundamental unit of measurement was based on the human body itself.
Exactly. It suggests it had a spiritual origin, not just a practical one, and this links directly to the core of their...
Because the 215-meter width of the Sun Pyramid equals exactly 260 TMUs.
Exactly. And the number 260 is not random at all. It is the number of days in the Tzolk'in ritual calendar.
The sacred calendar used all throughout Mesoamerica.
Right. So the city wasn't just aligned with the cosmos. The architecture itself was a physical embodiment of the rhythm of sacred time. That's a powerful statement about the nature of their state.
Okay, so moving from the abstract to the practical, how did they actually build these things?
Without metal or pack animals.
It must have required a mastery of material science and logistics that we often just, overlook.
They engineered a really elegant solution to the logistical problem of moving all that stone. They relied heavily on volcanic rock, specifically a lightweight porous basalt called tizontal.
Tizontal, so it was lighter.
Significantly lighter than, say, limestone or granite.
Yeah.
It drastically reduced the strain on human labor, making large-scale transport feasible without wheels or birds.
So they compensated for the lack of modern logistics with just hyper-efficient material selection.
An incredibly organized manpower.
But even using lightweight rock, dealing with the sheer crushing weight of a 1,000,000 cubic meter pyramid must have presented massive structural challenge. How did they stop them from just collapsing?
They developed an incredibly sophisticated stabilization technique known as construction cells.
Construction cell.
Think of a massive internal grid network made of adobe brick. This grid created thousands of small, load-bearing compartments.
Like a honeycomb.
Exactly like a honeycomb, and those were then filled with compacted dirt and rubble. This internal structure distributed the massive weight evenly and prevented catastrophic collapse.
Wow.
And it's theorized that this technique was perfected after they experienced structural failures, probably from volcanic eruptions or earthquakes. They were learning to build resilient structures.
Resilience born from necessity, and they were constantly pushing the boundaries.
The feathered serpent pyramid introduced the Telu Tablero architectural style.
The style that would later define the Maya classical period. You have that inward sloping wall, the talu, topped by a vertical ornamental panel, the tablet. And they introduced breathtaking complexity with things like the tenon sculpture.
Yes. When you look at those iconic feathered serpent heads, and they seem to be just floating on the pyramid facade.
Yeah.
That's achieved through advanced cantilever technology. A specific heavy section of the stone carving, the tenon, was built deep into the core of the pyramid wall.
So it counterbalances the visible sculpture?
Precisely. It prevents it from falling. This required precise calculation of weight distribution and material strength, far exceeding the techniques used in contemporary cultures across the continent.
And all this power, all this engineering genius, it was all designed to culminate in these spectacular rituals. La Cittadella, that massive open-air stage incorporating the feathered serpent pyramid, it covered 160,000 square meters. It was built for drama.
And the drama, as you say, was cosmological. The complex was deliberately engineered to be flooded during major ceremonies? Yes. By flooding the space around the pyramid, they were recreating the myth of the primitive sea, from which the sacred mountain, the pyramid itself, arose. It symbolized the moment of creation.
So the ruler standing on top of that pyramid was literally enacting the origin.
That was the idea.
The cost of guaranteeing that sacred mountain's permanence, though, was horrific. We're talking about mass sacrifice.
Overwhelming human sacrifice. The foundational stages of major monuments were often dedicated with hundreds of victims.
For the feathered serpent pyramid alone, the evidence points to 260 victims.
Which mirrors the 260 days of the Tzolk'in calendar again.
It always comes back to that. And these weren't just commoners. They were often high-status individuals, foreign warriors, diplomats.
Right. It suggests sacrifice was deeply intertwined with state policy and diplomatic relations. It was a brutal guarantee for the durability and success of the land.
It wasn't just violence. It was a ritualized, high-stakes investment in state security.
And this brings us to perhaps the most intriguing find of the 21st century. The mysterious tunnel discovered beneath the feathered serpent pyramid.
This find is just extraordinary.
It's a 102-meter-long, man-made cavity. It was sealed and reopened several times over the life of the city.
And when archaeologists finally got inside,
they found it was meticulously lined with sparkling mineral powders, pyrite, hematite, magnetite, all brought from distant.
why? What was the effect?
These minerals created this shimmering, starry effect in the pitch blackness. It was designed to represent the ultimate subterranean underworld.
So it sounds less like a tomb and more like a carefully crafted hallucinatory experience, a portal.
That's the interpretation. A portal designed to be traversed by the ruler.
And while a definitive king's tomb was never found.
Which is probably because the Teotihuacanos were known iconoclasts. They destroyed symbols of rulers after their death.
Right, but there were clues buried in this tunnel.
They found 4 smaller stone statues and the highly fragmented remains of a larger male figure. It suggests a powerful leader from an earlier era whose cult was later suppressed.
But the offerings are what really shake up the narrative of Teotihuacan as this purely monolithic power.
Yes, the vast majority of the expensive, exotic offerings found in the tunnel jade, amber, finely carved shells were almost exclusively Maya in origin.
Maya?
Yes, including one artifact bearing a Maya glyph for king. This implies that the Maya contributed significantly, not just through trade, but ideologically. They may have supplied the esoteric knowledge or religious identity that Teotihuacan then adopted and magnified.
So it suggests a more complex, maybe even a borrowed system of divine authority than we previously assumed.
I think so.
So this incredibly sophisticated, perfectly planned, absolutely controlled system, it finally collapsed around 650 AD. What caused the failure of the birthplace of the god?
The sources suggest a fatal combination of economic vulnerability and internal strife. Teotihuacan made a massive economic gamble. They centralized production on specialized goods, primarily obsidian artifacts for blades and weapons.
And they stopped farming.
They stopped large-scale farming, even closing their extensive hydraulic system. This made the city wholly reliant on importing food to sustain its 200,000 inhabitants.
That is a textbook definition of risky dependency. If trade routes are interrupted, or a trading partner fails, the city is instantly vulnerable to starvation.
And compounding that external risk was internal conflict. Evidence points to growing tension between the wealthy elite and the lower class.
And the elite responded with, what? Repression.
Increasingly repressive measures. They physically narrowed main roads and set up surveillance buildings designed to control access to central residential compound, essentially creating a lockdown state.
And this repression, I'm guessing, ultimately backfired.
It culminated in a violent internal rebellion around 650 AD. The outcome was definitive.
What happened?
The central ceremonial center, the very heart of the cosmogram, was violently burned. And this wasn't just torching a few wooden buildings. This was a major effort to destroy stone structures. It signifies the complete and definitive collapse of central authority.
And the abandonment was sudden.
Sudden and complete. The archaeological record shows a sudden flight. People took only what they could carry, leaving behind heavy but essential items like grindstones with cornmeal residue still on them. They just left. The perfect cosmogram shattered.
So if Teotihuacan showed us the fragility of a perfectly centralized cosmogram that basically devoured itself, let's turn to Tikal. This city existed in the deep jungle of northern Guatemala, founded earlier, around 800 BC, and it was settled there specifically because of the presence of pristine, sacred waters.
A real rarity in that landscape, and Tikal is the perfect counterpoint because it forced a unique kind of ingenuity focused on survival and resilience, not just perfect planning.
And to understand its scale, we have to talk about it.
We absolutely do.
Here's where it gets really interesting. LiDAR, light detection and ranging, is an aerial laser system that can see through thick tree canopies, stripping away the vegetation to reveal the true topography and man-made structures below.
And when archaeologists scanned over 2,000 square kilometers of the Tikal area, the results they fundamentally changed archaeology.
How so?
They revealed over 60,000 previously unseen human structures, everything from massive fortresses to small dwellings and extensive agricultural.
5,000.
Yeah. Before LiDAR, Tikal was thought to cover a core area of about 16 square kilometers.
And after?
After the scan, the core urban area was revised to 75 square kilometers, with a total peri-urban area of 527 square kilometers.
That is just an exponential explosion of scale. We're talking about a city 38 times larger than we thought.
A densely populated metropolitan region with a population density similar to modern France. This scale, though, took time to build. The city's rise began slowly. Early structures like the Lost World Pyramid were built in these continuous layers, the onion effect, where the earliest structure was only 3 meters high.
But their focus quickly turned to the heavens, just like in Teotihuacan.
Yes, the mastery of astronomy was inextricably linked to power. Maya priests observed the cycles of Venus, the sun, and the moon, not just as science, but as prophecy.
So they used this knowledge to dictate rituals, plan military campaigns,
and reinforce the divine authority of their major temples were aligned with precision to mark and critic start and end of the wet and dry. This ability to predict and control time was the ultimate tool for power.
But Tikal's history is scarred by external. In January 378 AD, Tikal was permanently altered by the powerhouse Teotihuacan.
This event is one of the most debated in Maya. We have epigraphic evidence from a monument, Stela 31, that records that on the same day these foreigners arrived, the king of Tikal died.
So the interpretation is a conquest.
The interpretation is that Teotihuacano soldiers, likely with superior weapons and discipline, conquered Tikal and installed a new dynasty.
But how do we know it was a true conquest and not just, a political narrative created later by the new dynasty to legitimize their rule?
That's a crucial question. But the evidence leans toward conquest because the material culture changed so dramatically and so...
Okay.
We see Teotihuacan-style military gear and iconography appearing immediately in the art. Furthermore, LiDAR revealed a structure that was previously thought to be just a natural hill.
And it wasn't.
Upon closer inspection, it strongly resembles La Ciudadela from Teotihuacan. This suggests a newly discovered Teotihuacan barrio, a neighborhood right within Tikal. A large contingent of foreign people brought their specific architecture with them.
So the local elite, though maybe initially subdued, eventually reasserted themselves, adopting this foreign prestige to rebuild their own authority.
A great example is King Jasak Chankau. After his decisive victory over the rival city of Calakmul in 695 AD, he immediately ordered the construction of massive temples to declare Tikal's return to absolute power.
And these temples were expressions of personal and state power. Kings like Kawil were buried under structures like Temple 1, the temple of the jaguar priest.
In Maya writing, temples were called Wid, which means mount. They symbolize the axis mundi, the central pillar connecting the 9 levels of the underworld, human realm, and the...
And that connection required the ultimate expression of devotion, sacred bloodletting.
Yeah. The ruler, acting as the living link between these, would perform self-sacrifice, sometimes piercing sensitive areas to shed blood.
White blood.
Blood was the central sacred element that bridged the material and the divine. Shedding it was necessary to connect the ruler to their ancestors, and it often induced hallucinatory states,
which were then interpreted as the ability to predict the future.
Exactly. It legitimized every political and military decision.
But the engineering required to build these divine mountains cannot be overstated. Consider Temple 4, built by Kawil's son. At 70 meters high, it remains the highest temple ever constructed in Mesoamerica.
And its slope is a dizzying 82 degrees.
That steepness is incredible. Think about the physical domain. Not only did the builders have to haul 119,000 cubic meters of backfill,
but the priests and royalty had to climb that structure carrying 200 pounds of ceremonial equipment, maybe after fasting and shedding blood. It demanded intense physical training from childhood just to manage the stairs without falling.
The stability is the key. To support that immense volume and that sharp, dangerous slope, they had to evolve the stabilization techniques we saw in Teotihuacan.
They absolutely refined it. Instead of just internal construction cells, the Tikal architects call construction around 250 internal appendage cells acting like a massive, sophisticated beehive within the structure,
providing superior internal,
much better handling of the backfill. They even laid down a massive 5-meter-thick, 15,000 square meter platform just to stabilize the ground before they even started building the temple.
Their mastery of stone is impressive, but we established earlier that Tikal's scale would have been impossible without their mastery of water.
This is perhaps the most stunning realization from LiDAR. Since Tikal couldn't rely solely on those initial sacred springs, they developed a gigantic, complex hydraulic system.
How did it work?
They used the natural inclination of the main plazas, which are surprisingly large and subtly sloped, to collect and channel every single drop of rainwater into massive terraces.
And the capacity is hard to grasp. The total storage reached an astounding 900,000 cubic.
That's nearly 1 billion liters of water held in reservoirs just to sustain the population through the long dry.
But the technology goes beyond just storage.
It does. LiDAR helped reveal that the upper tanks were filled with carefully placed layers of sand and sediment. They were serving as a sophisticated water filtration.
Water filter. That level of purification technology was previously undocumented for ancient Mesoamerica.
It shows an essential state-level investment in public health.
And that water system wasn't just for survival. It was the ultimate tool for political control.
Absolutely. The massive effort required to maintain those dams and canals gave the elite total control over distribution. Control the water, people.
But this complex, massive, centralized system contained its own seeds of destruction.
It did. By the mid-8th century, Tikal was struggling to manage its enormous territory. This led to political fragmentation.
So local lords started breaking away.
They started proclaiming themselves independent, divine lords of Tikal. The political center began to unravel.
At the same time, environmental pressures became overwhelming.
A perfect storm. The region was hit by an unprecedented, prolonged drought. with precipitation dropping by about. This crisis was made worse by massive environment. The constant need for plaster to coat their temples required burning lime, which led to widespread deforestation.
So the complex hydraulic system, the source of their power, turned into a catastrophic vulnerability.
It did. When the drought made maintenance impossible, the massive infrastructure designed to sustain the population suddenly accelerated the decline.
And as crops failed and reservoirs ran low, the elite responded by
doing the one thing they knew how to do, building even more temples and increasing the number of massive sacrifices.
a costly behavior that failed entirely to address the malnutrition and economic crisis. It's a profound disconnect.
The population lost faith. Why pay tribute to a ruler whose rituals failed to bring the essentials?
And as the population abandoned the city, the elite tried to stop the bleeding.
Which leads to the final dramatic discovery from LiDAR. A 6-meter-tall defensive wall surrounding.
Wall.
And this wall wasn't just for defense against external enemies. The evidence suggests it was constructed to contain the increasingly desperate population, to prevent outward migration, and control who could access the dwindling resources as the system collapsed. Tikal became a ghost town in less than a...
Our journey concludes in the Yucatan. Then, centuries later, where Chichén Itzá rose to power, becoming the last great Maya city.
Right. This apex occurred around the 11th century AD, filling the power vacuum left by the mass exodus and collapse of southern cities like Tikal.
And Chichén Itzá's location was entirely deliberate. It was built atop desirable limestone deposits, but its real power lay in leveraging the sacred cenote sagrado.
A vast natural sinkhole, 60 meters wide and 40 meters. This cenote provided an unparalleled, stable water source and immediately became the most important sacred site in the entire Maya region.
Drawing pilgrims from distant, destabilized areas. That constant water supply, the critical resource the southern cities lost, provided the foundation for stability.
But like Teotihuacan, the entire city was built upon this profound obsession with the
For the Maya, the cenotes and caves weren't just geology. They were the physical manifestation of Xibal, the world of the dead.
Yet, paradoxically, they were also the source of life and fertility. The constant dripping of water from stalactites was interpreted as the breasts of the earth nourishing life.
And the stalagmites as symbols of generation.
Exact. When they met, it symbolized the earth copulating to create life, making the caves intensely sacred.
This subterranean preoccupation leads directly to the iconic monument of the city, El Castillo, the pyramid dedicated to Kukulkan.
And we know it's located precisely at the intersection of the four cenotes that surround, forming a cross.
But recent geological surveys have revealed something even more astounding.
They used electrodes to survey the bedrock and found strong evidence suggesting a massive, undiscovered fifth cenote 20 meters high and 30 meters wide exists just 5 meters beneath the center of.
So if that's confirmed, it means the city's most important structure, the physical mechanism connecting heaven and earth, is literally built directly on top of a massive watery portal to the underworld.
It grounds the entire cosmology of the city in physical reality. It absolutely reinforces the idea that this pyramid was specifically placed to sit at the vertical axis, uniting the celestial realm, the human realm, and the kingdom of darkness.
So transitioning to the political reality, Chichén Itzá was described by our sources as a predatory state.
Ruthlessly efficient in building its economic dominance.
How so?
That ruthlessness allowed it to quickly dominate the entire Yucatan Peninsula. They eliminated competition and seized control of crucial commercial choke points, particularly coastal ports like islands.
Which gave them access to salt.
Direct access to strategically valuable salt, which was essential for food preservation and trade. By controlling the salt economy, Chichén Itzá cemented itself as the region's greatest economic power.
And their trade routes reached all the way to the Mexican highlands, to Tula, the Toltec capital.
1,500 kilometers away. And that distant trade connection was incredibly influential. As thousands of people, merchants, artists, warriors migrated to Chichén Itzá, the city underwent a radical culture.
You see that?
The Temple of the Warriors complex is the strongest evidence. This complex, supported by 200 columns, is architecturally almost a direct copy of Tula's.
So it's a deliberate adoption of an international, cosmopolitan, and highly successful culture.
Yes. And this cultural shift coincided with a significant political trend. Power in Chichén Itzá shifted away from the traditional concept of the centralized divine king, the model that had failed in Tikal.
to powerful military guilds or warrior societies.
This is a fundamental change in Maya governance. Instead of a single, divinely ordained ruler, power was held by a collective of high-ranking military lords who focused on publicly displaying their military pride. Their focus was outward, on conquest and extraction.
And the state relied heavily on public spectacle and terror to maintain that tribute.
The Zompentli, or skull rack platform, is the macabre highlight of this warrior culture. It was designed to be terrifyingly visible.
What was it?
The structure was adorned with carvings depicting hundreds, possibly thousands, human skulls impaled on a wooden rack. This spectacle served as a constant, brutal reminder of the state's absolute power and the inevitable fate awaiting its enemies.
And these enemies were often captured survivors from vanquished cities.
Exactly. Brought back to Chichén Itzá to become part of this ongoing public drama of control.
Speaking of public drama, the Great Ball Court there is the largest in all of Mesoamerica.
It stretches 170 meters long. It was the centerpiece of their social and religious life, a massive state-sponsored operation.
Where two teams, composed of high-status elites and lords, competed.
But the consequences of losing were ultimate. The swift sacrifice of the losing players, often beheading or heart removal, was viewed not as punishment, but as the highest possible honor.
An honor essential for the fertility of the crop and the continuation of the cosmic cycle.
It was a machine designed to make the world continue to function through violent necessity.
Yet the ultimate celestial mechanism of the city was still El Castillo, dedicated to Kukulkan, the feathered serpent.
It is a perfect physical representation of the solar count. Count the 91 steps on all four sides, plus the top platform, the total equals 305.
The days of the solar year. But its real genius is its precise alignment with the sun.
On the spring and fall equinoxes, the position of the sun creates a massive shadow serpent Kukulkan that appears to wriggle down the ballast.
The symbolic moment of creation, linking heaven and earth and marking the shift to the rainy, it was a functioning clock.
It was. And it hides deeper secrets. When archaeologists tunneled inside in the 1930s, they discovered a second, smaller pyramid entirely encased within the outer,
which confirmed the Maya tradition of rebuilding and adding a new layer every 52 years.
When their two calendars synchronized, a cosmic renewal ritual made physical. And this inner layer hides one of the greatest treasures, the Red Jaguar throne.
The Red Jaguar throne, a symbol of the underworld. This was the Sanctum Sanctorum.
Yes, this was the place where the leaders stood, believing they were receiving energies simultaneously from the celestial realm and the underworld, from that possible synode beneath the pyramid. The vertical axis of El Castillo united all strata of the cosmos in one spot.
And their knowledge of the heavens wasn't limited to the central pyramid. The El Caracol Observatory is an intense scientific commitment.
Its unique structure allowed for precise tracking of solstices, equinoxes, and especially the movements of Venus.
Venus, which was associated not with romance, but with war.
The original Star Wars, as some scholars call it, observation was a tool for statecraft. The priests used the predictability of the stars for prophecy, controlling politics, military campaigns, and the populace.
And there's even speculation they had systems more advanced than the naked eye.
Based on trenches found around El Caracol, yeah. They may have housed sophisticated internal systems, maybe involving screens or gears to refine their observation.
Despite all this genius, though, Chichén Itzá also collapsed. By the end of the 11th century, like Tikal before it, the region suffered a severe drought.
The environmental stress was crippling. Crop failure meant peasants couldn't pay their tax. Our sources indicate that the military elite, deprived of the subsidies needed to maintain their predatory state, simply disappeared. The system failed.
The fascinating debate here is the cause of the failure. Was it purely climate disaster, or was it systemic?
Some archaeologists argue that, similar to the fall of the Soviet Union, the city had become too diverse, a cosmopolitan center with lots of different people, with lots of different values and norms. The inherent political complexity became too overwhelming to manage when resources dwindled.
So whether it was ecological stress or internal fragmentation, the warrior system failed.
And Chichén Itzá was abandoned as a political center, though significantly it remained a powerful religious pilgrimage site centuries after.
So what does this all mean? We've traced a remarkable path through Mesoamerica, from the calculated orthogonal cosmogram of Teotihuacan to the massive hydraulic systems of Tikal, and finally the celestial war mechanism of El Castillo and Chichen.
They really pushed the absolute limits of human ingenuity and organizational power without any of the tools we consider modern necessity.
The overarching lesson, the common thread in their eventual downfall, it seems to be this exquisitely fragile balance they maintain between political control, religious obsession, and the environment.
All three collapsed due to a dangerous cocktail. Internal strife, whether it was rebellion in Teotihuacan, fragmentation in Tikal, or over-reliance on military Itza.
All combined with overwhelming ecological stress from massive droughts and deforestation.
What's fascinating here is that despite their absolute mastery of stability and water-building 70-meter pyramids that stood the test of time and creating enormous reservoirs, the failure stemmed.
That immense infrastructure, which required constant, massive state effort to maintain, only accelerated the collapse when the environment failed them.
When the state could no longer guarantee the basic necessity water, the very monumentality of their systems became a burden that pulled them down fast.
They built systems that were simply too big and too costly to fail.
And they failed spectacularly.
This raises an important question for us today. What lesson can be drawn from highly centralized societies that use massive architectural displays and symbols of fear, like the Tzompantli or mass sacrifice, to maintain absolute control, yet fundamentally fail to adapt when environmental or political conditions shift?
Their durability in stone did not translate into durability of the state system.
And finally, a provocative thought for you, the listener. We've dedicated significant time to the absolute obsession these cultures had with the underworld, with Xibalba. We saw the evidence of the red jaguar throne hidden within El Castillo, the sealed, glittering tunnel beneath Teotihuacan's feathered serpent pyramid, and the electrode evidence suggesting a massive, hidden cenote directly beneath El Castillo itself.
Considering how central the idea of the underworld was to maintaining political power,
what was the ultimate priceless secret the elite were trying to protect by burying their knowledge in their most sacred space? What truths remain hidden in the bedrock of these megas, waiting for the next generation of LiDAR scan logical survey?